She was setting the dinner table for her fiancé. Her children played quietly nearby. And then the screen went still. Moments later, their home became a bloodbath. When police arrived, they found a woman clinging to life, her face shattered, her children unrecognizable. But one detail stood out. The front door was unlocked. It was like she knew the killer. And she did. This is the story of Emma Ljungstig, the mother who survived one of Sweden's most horrific crimes, and the obsession that ended in tragedy, the Emma Ljungstig case. Emma Ljungstig was born in Stockholm, Sweden, on a cold winter morning in February 1985. The youngest of two daughters, she was quiet, artistic, and deeply family-oriented. A girl who, according to friends, never raised her voice even when she had every reason to. By the age of 19, Emma had fallen in love with a boy named Nicholas, her high school sweetheart. Their relationship moved quickly. Within a year, they were married, and Emma was already expecting her first child. In 2005, she gave birth to a son, Max, and just a year and a half later, a daughter followed, Saga. To the outside world, it looked like a happy young family finding their way. But beneath the surface, cracks were already forming. Emma and Nicholas were simply too young and unprepared for the relentless pressure of raising two children. Arguments escalated. Communication broke down. And in 2007, barely 3 years after their marriage began, it ended. The divorce wasn't peaceful. Custody became a bitter legal war, with each parent fighting not only for their children, but also against the pain of betrayal and resentment. Nicholas accused Emma of keeping the kids from him. Emma accused Nicholas of control and threats. Police reports were filed, and yet, somehow, Emma remained calm, focused on what she believed was best for Max and Saga. In the middle of the chaos, she met someone new. His name was Tony Hellberg, an earnest, soft-spoken man with a steady job and a genuine smile. They met online, bonding quickly over music, literature, and their mutual desire for a quiet life. To Tony, it didn't matter that Emma came with two children. In fact, he welcomed them. He told her, "If I'm with you, I'm with all of you." Soon, Emma made the bold decision to leave Stockholm behind. She and her children moved to Arvika, a small, peaceful town nearly 150 kilometers west, where she and Tony could start over. They rented a modest house with a garden, and each child had their own room. Tony worked full-time. Emma stayed home, raising the children and building a home from scratch. They were planning their wedding. Emma picked the date, summer 2008. Her dress was already on layaway. But just 3 months before their big day, everything would fall apart. And when it did, it happened not in hours, but minutes. 3 lives forever changed in just 13 minutes. March 17th, 2008, a Monday. For most people in the small town of Arvika, it was an ordinary day. But inside one quiet home just off a tree-lined street, a tragedy was silently counting down. That evening, Emma was home with her children, Max, now 3, and Saga, just a toddler at 1.5. Tony had left for work early in the morning. Emma stayed behind, tending to the children, cleaning the house, and preparing dinner. She was also texting back and forth with her sister Katarina, discussing a gift for their parents' upcoming wedding anniversary. Just 2 sisters chatting. Ordinary, warm, forgettable. Until the messages stopped. At 7:07 p.m., Katarina saw her sister typing. Then nothing. The typing bubble disappeared. No message sent. At first, Katarina assumed Emma was distracted by the kids. But minutes passed. She called Emma. No answer. Then she called Tony, who was just pulling into the driveway. He would be the first to find what no one should ever have to see. The front door was unlocked. At first, Tony thought the children had made a mess. Toys, books, items scattered around, but then He saw the floor. Brown-red smears, stains that weren't paint. He called out, "Emma? Max? Saga?" Silence. Then he saw something small on the floor. At first glance, it looked like a doll discarded in the hallway. But as he moved closer, it was Saga, lying in a pool of blood, her head shattered, her small face unrecognizable. Just a few feet away, he found Max, his tiny skull caved in, and finally, Emma, on the floor, motionless, her face beaten beyond recognition, her limbs twisted unnaturally. Tony reached for his phone, hands shaking. He called emergency services, barely able to form words. "They're all on the floor. There's blood everywhere. I think they're dead." But then, a sound, a groan. Emma. Somehow she was still alive. Paramedics arrived within minutes. They couldn't believe what they saw. All 3 victims were still alive, barely. Emma, Max, and Saga were rushed to the nearest hospital. The doctors had no hope. Their skulls were crushed, their breathing shallow, their brains swelling, their blood everywhere. Even if they survived, they would never wake up. As surgeons worked frantically in one room, in another, detectives began the work of their own, piecing together the chaos left behind. The house was a mess, blood smeared on walls, furniture overturned, belongings scattered. The attacker had moved fast and had moved violently. No murder weapon was found, but from the shape and severity of the wounds, it was clear. A heavy, blunt object, most likely a hammer. The brutality of the attack wasn't random. It was personal. It was angry. It was full of hate. Grim pause. And the whole thing took just 13 minutes. Tony Hellberg was the first suspect. He had found the bodies. He had called the police. And he was not married to Emma nor the father of her children. Facts that investigators considered carefully in the opening hours of the case. What if this was a domestic dispute? What if it was jealousy, resentment, or rage boiling over? But Tony had an alibi. His colleagues at work confirmed he'd left late, just as he said. Surveillance footage placed him in the streets of Arvika, walking home at the exact time the attack occurred. The timestamps matched down to the minute. He couldn't have done it, not physically, not logistically. Still, he was kept at the station for hours. Questioned, pressed, pushed, not because they believed he was guilty, but because sometimes the smallest memory, a sound, a word, a shadow, can break a case open. But Tony had seen nothing. He had no idea who could have done this. He told police again and again that Emma had no enemies. No conflicts, no threats. The only person who had ever clashed with her was her ex-husband, Nicholas. So the focus shifted. Nicholas had every reason to be angry. He had lost custody of his children. He had fought bitterly in court with Emma. And he had once made threats that were serious enough for Emma to report him to the police. When investigators brought Nicholas in, they expected a defensive man, perhaps one full of rage. But what they got was something else entirely. Nicholas was inconsolable. When they told him Max and Saga were dead, he collapsed into sobs. He insisted there had to be a mistake. He asked to see them. He said he would never ever hurt his children, no matter how badly things had ended with Emma. At first, the detectives weren't sure what to believe, but then they checked his alibi. Nicholas had been in another city, 120 miles away, at the time of the attack. Records showed he had booked a hotel for a short business trip. Witnesses placed him there. Security footage confirmed it. So he too was ruled out. Now the police were left with no clear suspect, no weapon, no fingerprints, and nothing but a blood-soaked crime scene and a survivor in a coma. But there was one clue they couldn't ignore. One detail that stood out from the rest. The front door had been unlocked. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, no tampered locks. Whoever entered the house that evening hadn't broken in. They had been let in, which meant Emma had opened the door, either to someone she knew or someone who made her feel safe enough to turn the handle. Investigators began retracing every step of the hours before the attack. They canvassed the neighborhood, interviewed residents, pulled footage from nearby street cameras, and that's when a neighbor came forward with something strange. She said that earlier in the afternoon, around 5 p.m., she had seen someone outside the house. A small figure dressed entirely in black. She couldn't see a face because of the hood, but the figure was lingering, watching, walking slowly near the property. She thought it was odd, maybe even threatening, but it was over quickly. She didn't report it. At first, police thought it might be a man, but then another witness came forward, a clerk from a nearby convenience store. Their camera had also picked up the same figure. The footage showed someone walking past in a hoodie, alone, no visible weapon. And when Tawny was shown the footage, he went pale. He told investigators that he recognized the build, the walk, the outline. He believed it was his ex-girlfriend. Her name was Christina Schurer, and she had a history. They had met briefly years ago while Tawny was on vacation in Greece. She was working as a tour guide at the time. Intelligent, charismatic, cultured. They had a short affair. When it ended, Tawny thought it was over. But for Christina, it never ended. She had shown up in Sweden uninvited, tried to rekindle their connection, sent dozens of messages, called, showed up at his door, told him she'd had a child by him, a lie she couldn't even keep consistent. At one point, she even faked a suicide attempt when he refused to meet her. Tawny hadn't seen her in over a year. He assumed she had finally moved on. But now, looking at the figure on the screen, he knew she hadn't. Police tracked Christina to her apartment, but when they got there, she was already gone. Her roommate told them she had packed suddenly the night before and said she was going back to Germany. The timing was too perfect to ignore. A European arrest warrant was issued. Just days later, Christina was detained by authorities in Germany and extradited to Sweden. At first, she denied everything, said it was a mistake, said she had nothing to do with the attack. But the police had already begun searching her belongings, and what they found next would leave no room for doubt. Christina Schurer was calm when police arrested her. Too calm. She didn't ask what she was being charged with. She didn't seem surprised. She didn't deny knowing Tawny, only claimed she hadn't seen him in a while. When asked where she had been on March 17th, she dodged the question, then stated that she was probably at home, but couldn't say for certain. After being extradited back to Sweden, she made one request: to speak with Tawny. Investigators denied it. She asked again and again, each time with the same eerie calmness, as if the arrest was just an inconvenience, a detour before getting what she wanted. Then police searched her apartment. They found the toolkit first, a simple household box of tools kept by her roommate. But one tool was missing: a hammer. Her roommate confirmed that it had been there before and that Christina had been using it weeks earlier to, quote, hang some frames. That detail alone wasn't enough to charge her, but it added to a growing picture. Next, they confiscated her laptop. Inside, they found hundreds of photographs. Many were of Tawny, pictures taken from social media, some of them old, some more recent. Some photos showed him alone. Others showed him with Emma. And in several, he was with Max and Saga. The images of Emma and her children had been saved in a separate folder. The folder name translated from German into something truly disturbing: Ruined Life. Each file had its own title, not just names, but slurs, insults, threats, captions written in jagged language and strange grammar. She took him. I will take everything. Their eyes will close soon. He chose them. Let him bury them. There were also text files, rambling documents that read like manifestos. In them, Christina wrote about Tony as if they were still in a relationship. She referred to Emma as the enemy, as a thief, as someone who poisoned him. She blamed the children for distracting him. She described dreams where she cleansed the house and brought him back. Police also discovered a handwritten notebook. Inside were crude sketches, a floor plan of Emma and Tony's new house, marked with notes. He leaves at 7:15. She alone till dinner. Windows here, door unlocked. Then came the search history. It included phrases like, how to knock someone unconscious instantly, murder weapon that doesn't leave fingerprints, how to fake an alibi, what does brain trauma look like, how much blood lost to die, and even, can love make you kill someone? When police confronted Christina with the evidence, she simply stared at the screen. Then she said something that made the lead detective freeze. He should have just answered my calls. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She asked again to speak to Tony. Again, she was denied. It was clear. She believed that what she had done, or what she was accused of, was justified. In her eyes, it wasn't murder. It was something else, something she never named but clearly believed in. Meanwhile, Emma was still in the hospital. Her condition had stabilized, and doctors began the process of bringing her out of the medically induced coma. But there was a complication: memory loss. Emma didn't know what had happened. She thought she had been in a car accident. She asked repeatedly where her children were. No one wanted to tell her the truth, but eventually they had to. When they told her that Max and Saga were dead, Emma screamed until her body gave out. She collapsed into a state of shock. They sedated her. The next time she woke, she asked again. She had no memory of the conversation. The trauma had buried it. This cycle repeated for days. She would ask. They would tell her. She would collapse. Eventually, her mind began to accept what had happened, and with that, fragments of the day returned. She remembered feeding the children, talking to her sister, setting the table, a knock at the door. She remembered a figure, short, wearing dark clothes, a hoodie, a face she couldn't quite place. She remembered pain, sharp, immediate, then darkness. Investigators decided to try something unconventional. With her consent and medical clearance, they brought Emma back to the house, the scene of the crime. Slowly, she walked through each room, stopped at each blood-stained space, touched the walls, and then, standing in the hallway where she had fallen, she spoke. "I remember her," she said. "I saw her face." When they showed her Christina's photo, Emma froze. "That's her," she whispered. She smiled right before everything went black. That was enough. Christina Schurer was formally charged with 2 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder and 1 of aggravated assault with intent to kill. And the trial would reveal just how far obsession can twist a human mind and how close a killer can be before anyone sees it coming. The trial began on July the 29th, 2008, inside a packed Swedish courtroom. For many in the country, this case had become more than a tragedy. It was a horror story. The idea that a woman could walk into a peaceful home and, in a matter of minutes, destroy an entire family, it shook people. And now they were about to hear everything. The prosecution laid out the case piece by piece. They spoke of the crime scene, a calculated, rage-filled assault, the blunt force trauma, the targeted blows to the heads of 2 small children, the chaos, the silence, the method. They presented the photos from Christina's laptop, the captions, the violent language, the digital trail of a woman obsessed, consumed by the idea that if she couldn't have Tony, no one could. They played the CCTV footage showing a hooded figure walking near Emma's house, the same figure Tony identified as Christina. They showed the internet searches. They presented the missing hammer, the map of Emma's house, the timeline. Piece by piece, they made one thing clear. This wasn't a random act of violence. This was premeditated murder. The defense, however, had only one strategy: to plead not guilty by way of mental instability. They claimed Christina had suffered from psychological issues for years, rooted in childhood trauma, abandonment by her father, and a life of unstable relationships. They presented her behavior in the courtroom as further proof. Because from the moment Christina walked in, something was off. She smiled, not nervously, not politely, but inappropriately. She waved at the crowd, at journalists. She looked around as if she was at a reunion, not a murder trial. And then, as the images of the crime scene were shown on a projector, pictures of Emma's bloodied face, of Max's broken skull, of Saga's small body lying in red, she laughed. Not a burst of madness, not a loss of control, but a low, knowing laugh. It silenced the room. Even her own attorney looked away. The prosecution responded swiftly. They ordered a psychiatric evaluation. If Christina was insane, she would not be criminally liable. But if she was not, she would face the full weight of the law. The psychiatric exam results were definitive. Christina Schurer was sane. She understood the charges. She understood what she had done. And more disturbingly, she enjoyed it. She had planned the murders. She had rehearsed the details. She had lied and manipulated and stalked and documented. And when the moment came, when she stood face to face with the woman she had come to hate, she didn't hesitate. She brought the hammer down on Emma's skull, then turned on the children. The trial lasted several weeks. The courtroom remained full. Emma was present only once, escorted in a wheelchair, her body still recovering. When she saw Christina, she fainted. Later, when she was revived and asked to identify the woman she had seen at her door that night, she didn't hesitate. "That's her," Emma said. "She's the last thing I saw before I blacked out." That testimony, raw, broken, but clear, sealed the case. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. They returned with a unanimous verdict. Guilty on all counts, Christina Schurer was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. She was also ordered to pay 20,000 euros in damages to Emma, a sum that would never erase the loss, but stood as a legal recognition of the horror she had survived. Christina showed no emotion when the sentence was read, no regret, no apology. She simply turned her head to the side, as if looking for Tony in the crowd. He was not there. Emma's recovery was long and agonizing. Physically, she would regain her strength, but emotionally, the scars would never fade. Her face required multiple surgeries. Her memory took months to rebuild, but her greatest loss, Max and Saga, could never be healed. Still, she found a way to go on. In the summer of 2010, Emma and Tony were married, quietly, privately, in the same town where their lives were nearly destroyed. Years later, they would have 2 more children together, siblings who would grow up knowing the names Max and Saga, knowing what happened, and why their mother sometimes cried at the dinner table when no one was speaking. Emma never became an activist. She didn't seek fame. But she spoke once, in a rare interview, where she said this: "You think it's a stranger who will hurt you. You teach your children not to talk to them. But sometimes it's not a stranger. It's someone who knocks and you open the door." There was no twist ending in this case, no final revelation that changed everything, no mystery that lingered unsolved. Instead, there was grief, long and slow. A young mother rebuilding her life from the ashes, a father mourning 2 children he would never see again, and a country stunned by the horror that can come not from strangers but from obsession. Christina Schurer never confessed, not once, not during the investigation, not during the trial, not even when the evidence towered above her. She never explained why she targeted the children. She never acknowledged their names. She never admitted that she had crossed a line that no one should ever even approach. Some believe she still lives in a world of her own design, one where Tawny belongs to her, where Emma was the villain, and where no crime was ever committed. A prison of delusion, now reinforced by walls and guards and steel. But for the real victims, the ones who survived, there is no such fantasy. Emma lives with the memory of what she saw, and what she almost didn't survive. She carries the silence of her children's voices, the half-folded laundry that was never put away, the dinner table that was never set. Tawny carries a different burden, one not just of loss but of guilt, however unjustified. He brought someone into his life who later destroyed it, and though no court would ever blame him, the feeling never fully leaves. As for the country of Sweden, it still refers to the Youngstig case as one of the most brutal domestic attacks in modern memory. A crime that began not with a weapon but with a message unanswered, a phone call ignored, a relationship ended, but not by both sides. Christina didn't just kill a family, she declared war on reality, and for 13 minutes she won. But justice came, slowly, methodically, unflinchingly. And in the years since, Emma has lived not in fear, but in quiet defiance. She doesn't hide, she doesn't run. She tells her new children about their older brother and sister. She honors them with love, not revenge. Because for a mother like Emma, surviving wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something else, something harder, something braver. If this case moved you, or if you believe stories like Emma's deserve to be heard, consider subscribing to the channel. These stories aren't easy, but they matter. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous people are not the ones hiding in the dark. They're the ones we used to love.